There are plenty of times in the gospel when I don't feel so bad about having a bad hair day or when I am not the best version of myself. Because Jesus certainly had those days. Today was one of those days. Jesus gets tired of his enemies trying to trip him up. They set him up for a question, trying to trick him into an answer that he can't win. Teacher, we know that you are a truthful man and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth, and you are not concerned with anyone's opinion. Is it lawful to pay the census tax to Caesar or not? And Jesus responds in a way that would not make him a candidate for the book on how to win friends and influence people. He would not get the award of the year because his answer is, "You hypocrites." Certainly not material for winning the award of the year for winning friends and influencing people. His answer is so interesting. He asks his questioners to bring him a coin and asks them whose inscription is on the coin. Caesar's face and his inscription. Well, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and give to God what belongs to God. We have coins in our own country. Faces of famous former people. Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, Franklin Roosevelt, George Washington. If coins with the face of Caesar are used to pay the government, what belongs to the government, then what belongs to God? What is the face of God stamped on? And where is the inscription of God? The answer, of course, is everyone. Your face, the face of the person next to you right now, your family's faces, even your mother-in-law's face, your enemies' faces. The face of God is stamped on every human being who has ever lived, is living now, and whoever will live. The inscription of God is written on every human being who has ever lived, is living now, and will ever live. The face of God is stamped on every face you look at, and even, or maybe especially, the one you look at in the mirror. Admittedly, it is easier to see the face of God stamped on some faces than on other faces. But the face of God is stamped on every human being. And the answer to the question, what belongs to God? The answer is simple but profound. Every human being belongs to God. The face of God is stamped on, and the inscription of God is written on every human being because all of us belong to God. And following this, then, of course, you'd have to say, okay, I belong to God, but does everything I have belong to God? The answer is yes. I will ask you, what do you have that you have not received from God? You might say, wait a minute. I worked really hard in high school to get into Notre Dame. I took AP classes. I did everything I possibly could to get into Notre Dame. Well, the answer to that is, well, that hard work is from God. Or you might say, wait. I studied 4 years. I stayed in every Friday night. I wanted to get to the medical school. I studied and studied and studied. I did everything I could. I joined clubs. I volunteered here and there. And now I'm in the medical school. I persevered and I got in. Well, the response to that is, well, that's great, but the perseverance is from God. Everything that we have and are is from God. It's easier, of course, to see the face of God stamped on the faces of people that we know, that we can talk with, that we have something in common with, that we might look like, and this is understandable. But we have to get to the point of seeing the face of God stamped on the faces of people we don't know, or who look different from us, who talk differently than we do, who have very different life experiences from our own. The face of God is stamped equally on every human face. Late Friday night, Kate Barrett from Campus Ministry and I returned from spending fall break at the U.S.-Mexico border working with immigrants and refugees coming into the States. We had 12 of our own students from Notre Dame, and there were also 12 students from a school at university in Mexico. We all worked at Sister Norma's shelter for immigrants and refugees. I think that after the week there, we would all agree it's easy to see the face of God on immigrants and refugees. Such beautiful and hopeful faces, such tender and kind faces, though most of us cannot imagine how they could be smiling given the ordeal they went through to get to where they are, fleeing their home countries for a better life for their children. Kate composed a prayer for the trip, and it went like this. When I am at the border, may I see you, Lord, and all the people I meet. May I hear you in the many languages and voices I will hear, even if I do not understand. May I taste you in the simple and nourishing foods I will be blessed to receive. May I smell you in the fragrance of babies, and even in refugee travelers who have suffered for hundreds of miles. And may I touch you when I greet everyone I meet at the border. May I be your hands when I sweep, or offer, or mop, or haul, or hug, or receive, or pray. Praying this beautiful prayer and reflecting on the prayer helps us to know and to believe from the inside out that the face of God is stamped on every human being. Just think of how the world would be if we really believed that and acted out of that. It would be impossible to villainize people. It'd be impossible to look down on people. Although as the Pope says, I love this line, I love this line, I love this line. The only time it's acceptable to look down on people is when you're bending over to pick them up. But it would be impossible to villainize people if we really believe the face of God is stamped on them. Seeing the face of God stamped on every human being helps us to know and to appreciate that we belong entirely to God. God has made each one of us for himself, and so we belong to God. So when Jesus tells his questioners, repay to God what belongs to God, it is a reminder to them and to us to live in such a way that this truth is not lost. Again, imagine how we would treat one another if we really could believe and operate out of this truth. And maybe it's not possible to believe it 100%, but what you can do 100% is want to believe it. That's for sure. This is the truth. We do belong to God. A good way to start believing that we belong to God is to know that the face of God and the inscription of God is stamped and written on every human being. This is our fundamental and foundational belonging. The face of God is stamped everywhere, for every one of us truly belongs to God.